Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, so we'll wait a few minutes. Everyone, time to wake up and get online. While we're waiting, so how's it going with the tragedy of Julius Caesar? How far along are we? We are going to have to go fairly quickly through this play. We've missed a lot of Mondays, and it's kind of thrown the schedule into a bit of turmoil. Okay, so I hope you have been reading as much as you can of the play, because we have today and next week. And I'm going to try to wrap up Julius Caesar in just those 2 days, which, as you know, by the way that I teach, is going to be a challenge. Okay, but I really feel it's necessary because I want us to have enough time to deal with King Lear, which is the longest play we're dealing with, and in many ways, well, I don't know if it's the most challenging, but it has so much going on. Okay. Yeah, the confirmed date for the English exit exam, I think, and I still have to get confirmation, but last I was told it's December 16th, I believe.
I have a question, but are we doing it online or in the classroom? What is the choice if we have to do it online?
I really don't have. I mean, I'm gonna get it because I've been getting a lot of questions about this recently. I have to contact the powers that be over at TAV so they can give me exact and precise information regarding the date and how it's going to be conducted this year. Obviously, you know, you should anticipate it's going to be remote, and how they're going to do that, I don't know. It's a bit tricky with this because it's government stuff and all that. But I'll try to get that information and post it to you this week. All right, I'm going to make a note to really move on that. But the last I heard, last time I brought it up, the date was December 16th. It's a Wednesday, I'm pretty sure. It's almost always on a Wednesday. Okay, but again, as soon as I have the information, I'll post it for everyone. Okay, now we'll get a few more people here. Again, so, how's it going with Julius Caesar? How do you find it? Are you loving it, hating it, struggling with it? How does it compare with Othello in terms of your understanding? I mean, it's a very different kind of a play. What's your reactions?
I think
Morale.
it is a little bit easier than Julius Caesar.
You think Othello is easier than Julius Caesar?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's to be
There are
expected.
so many characters in the Julius Caesar, but okay, I know as time goes on, it will be good.
Well, you know, keep it now. Again, I was kind of hoping that you'd get through at least the first 2 acts, and ideally the 3rd act. Has anyone gotten to the 3rd act?
I got to the 3rd act, but not very far.
Okay.
I got halfway through the 3rd act.
Okay. Well, that's something. I'm taking most of the. Oh, you're in Act 5 already. Asif, excellent. I am going to ask you, wherever you are at this point, to really try to finish the play for next week. And those of you who are only on the first act or haven't, gotten to the third act, I'm probably going to dip into that today. And so be attentive. While you have the disadvantage of not having read the act, if I'm talking about it, but you also have the advantage of then reading the act after we've talked about it. So be attentive in class, take notes so that when you're reading it, and for the rest of you, by all means, reread it if you can, so you can pick up on the things that I'm going to try to direct your attention to. Because it is a little more complex, because it's still one of his tragedies. It's not one of his history plays. His history plays pretty much dealing with English history, and this does, and I don't know if we'll have a chance to really explore this, how it relates to the political situation in England at the time that Shakespeare wrote it, even though it's taking place back in Roman times. But it is very political, right? And obviously, I'm not expecting you all to have a great knowledge of Roman history and the what transpired during the time of Julius Caesar, but we need to know a bit about it in order to really grasp the implications of what the conspirators, or why the conspirators are conspiring, and why they make the choice to assassinate Julius Caesar. Because the big question here is it a good choice? And how do they rationalize their choice? This is one of Shakespeare's more famous plays. There are so many lines from this play that you're probably familiar with, maybe in a different context, but that have resonated all these hundreds of years. And there's one of the most famous speeches, not just in Shakespeare, but in literature, in Act 3 with Mark Antony. All right, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear. And I am hoping to talk a little bit about that today, getting all the way to Act 3. Any other comments? No? I don't know how to take that, because I can't see your faces. I know I keep repeating myself, so I don't know if it's you have no comments because I've only read Act 1, or I have no comments because I don't really know what's going on. I am with this one, because we have less class time to deal with this. I have put together, and I'm not very good at this, those of you who've had me before know this, I have put together a bit of a PowerPoint, and I have put up, and we're going to look at that, and I have a document with a number of different questions pertaining to different acts and scenes to help guide you a bit, and also will be there to help you when you're studying for the final exam. Okay, but we'll get to that in a minute. Anything anyone wants to say? These Monday mornings, I know, are a little tough. It's Shakespeare and all your other classes. But yeah, the speech from Mark Antony, yeah, again, and what I'm hoping to do, if not today, certainly next week, is take a look at some clips of that speech, because it is a pivotal moment in this play. And one of the things we have to explore in Mark Antony's speech is the use of rhetoric. right? And what I mean by rhetoric, I mean traditional rhetoric in the Aristotelian sense of the word. Ethos, pathos, logos. And I am going to touch on that today and probably more so next week, because it's really, it's such an incredible example of that ability to persuade and convince. And we see that all, so often in politics today. It very much resonates with what goes on today, especially in the political world. And this is a political year, certainly in the United States, and of course, all the politics that surround the COVID-19, and how politicians deliver speeches in their attempt to get votes and persuade audiences to believe them. And the means in which you do that, that is often, when you're good use of rhetoric and your ability to draw people in, is in many respects can be considered, when you're good at it, manipulative. And that's why that speech by Mark Antony, which follows, of course, Brutus's speech, and we can compare the two and see how the citizens react. Okay, and the citizens are a big part of this play, and one of the ways we know that is well, think of the first scene. What happens in the first scene? Remember the importance of the first act and the first scenes in establishing a foundation from which the themes and the ideas and the action of the play will evolve. And the importance of being very attentive to what's transpiring in the first act, sometimes even into the second act, which is laying that groundwork that is essential to understanding what the play is about and what the play is, what issues the play is addressing. Okay, where are we here? Yeah, 21, that's not too bad. Okay, so let's just, what I have in the PowerPoint, and it's a short one, I am going to start with that because it lays a bit of the historical background. Okay, just I hopefully not too much, just enough to give you an idea of the setting and the atmosphere in which we start the play. What's going on here? Who is Caesar? Who is Pompey? What is, why are the noblemen angry at the citizens for celebrating the arrival of Caesar and all this stuff? It can be confusing, and without some background information, that whole opening scene can be a little disruptive. All right, so I just threw this together because I'm really not good at PowerPoints. But hopefully this will help a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. It'll be posted onto the Moodle site, so you can look at it. And I'm going to try to put up more PowerPoints for Julius Caesar, again, because we're going through it so quickly. What do we have here? So let's put this up here. Again, to give you an idea of what the political atmosphere is when this play begins, Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, is returning after fighting outside of Rome for an extended period of time. Now, this is, again, very simplified, but I think enough to give you an idea of where the concerns that the conspirators have come from. This triumvirate group of three men, okay, that ruled Rome. So you have Pompey, you have Caesar, and you have Crassus. without having to go into too much detail as to who they are, what's important here is to understand that by having the three, right, it allows for a check and balance type of system, very similar to democracy today. Okay, this is Rome as a republic, as opposed to Rome as an empire. And we'll have to touch on that a little bit as we go through. The point being that when you have, it's similar to the system where you have different groups that can challenge and check the other groups or the other people to ensure that not one person is completely in charge, because that is leading towards a type of dictatorship. All right, so in the United States, you have the legislative branch, you have the executive branch, and then you have the judicial branch of government, right? It's a great way to have a better understanding of what this was like in Roman times, Roman Republic and Empire times. And the whole purpose of that is to keep everyone in check. Not one of the three can dominate. But what happens here, and this is all the stuff that's what I'm going to show you now is what's happening before the play begins. So in 53 BC, Crassus, one of the three, dies. And this ends this triad, if you will, and removes one of the buffers. And what ends up happening is now it's setting Pompey and Caesar against one another. Okay, and the trouble begins right between the two. So Caesar is fighting Pompey. And Pompey was, again, go back.
He's dead.
Well, yes, when we start here, Pompey gets killed. But Pompey was, to a large extent, clashing with Caesar because his concern of Caesar's ambition. And again, the ambition theme is vital here for the play. So once this triad is destroyed, the concern is that now Rome will slip into a kind of dictatorship. And there's fear that Caesar is ambitious and looking to become that one and only leader. And this is what prompted this clash. Hold on. There we go. Maybe that's the one we just looked at. There we are. So again, you can read this yourself. I'm not just going to read it to you. Army to return to Rome. Instead, what happens is Caesar invades Rome and took control and chased Pompey all the way to Egypt. Pompey was killed before Caesar could capture him. And Caesar also defeated and killed Pompey's sons in Spain. That's the setting we have now. And it's important to know that when we see how the noblemen are responding to the citizens. Okay. So the fears of the conspirators become valid when Caesar refuses to enter Rome as an ordinary citizen after the war. Instead, he marches his army on Rome and takes over the government. So we have the noblemen, the leaders, if you will, having a real issue with this, but the people don't mind. Okay, and that's, again, setting us up for the first scene. The senators do, right, because he's gaining too much power, and of course, compounding that is he has the people behind him. And he's going to use that and exploit that. And one of the ways that he has the support of the people, and this comes up in the play again when we have that famous Mark Antony speech when he talks about what Caesar leaves in his will for the people. And it's very clever and political means by which to ingratiate himself with the commoners, if you will, the people. Spending the money on public entertainment, establishing laws that freed farmers and tradesmen, improve the overall. I mean, again, it's very political, but it's all very much geared to not just help the people. It does, but it's also a political means by which to garnish their support. You see this again in politics today all the time. Promises are made all the time. Okay, whether they follow up on those promises after they're elected is always to be seen. And again, it's the two systems are not a complete match. But of course, in following up on those, you will keep the people happy. And again, a big part of the play as well, and one of the reasons that Brutus and the rest are looking to overthrow Caesar, and they're certainly Brutus's justification for it, is that Caesar actually poses a threat to the people by establishing himself as a dictator. So the rationale is, I'm doing this for the people. Again, so Brutus thinking he must act against Caesar for the good of Rome. And there's Casca, who hates the ordinary citizens of Rome, yet is jealous because they love Caesar and not him. And Cassius, a greedy and jealous. Cassius is a remarkable character in this play, who wants to take drastic measures to keep Caesar from winning any more power and to take away any power that Caesar previously had. Because we notice that Cassius is the one who basically recruits Brutus into the conspiracy, into the move towards assassinating Caesar. This, just because we have to deal with it in the beginning, Lupercus, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing right, was the fertility god of the Romans worshipped. I'm hoping this is resonating with you. Sacrifice goats, etc. Then the important thing here was believed that pregnant women would have an easier labor, and infertile women would become fertile when the young men wearing only strips of go around the loins ran around, and the women they touch the women would touch them. It does become important, if you remember, when Caesar asks his wife to touch Mark Antony, who is one of the people who's going to be running. Mainly here, the reason for this PowerPoint is to give you that background information. I know it's not detailed, but I'm hoping that's going to be enough to give you a better understanding of the setting in which we enter the play. So, someone's familiar with the Macbeth. Excellent. Yes, there is similarities in this in terms of prophecies and the supernatural and superstitions. They abound in this play, right? And of course, what we want to be alerted to when we see references to nature, well, we know this from reading Othello. Shakespeare does this a lot. The disruption of nature is a reflection of the disruption of the society and the disruption of, at times, the individual, right? Human nature and nature, if you will, somewhat hand in hand, one reflecting the other. And of course, a big part of this is what we're seeing is how the instances of this disrupted nature and in this case, elevated to a level of the supernatural, how people interpret it. A lot of this, as I said, it's about ambition, but it's also about recognizing and understanding people and motives. There's a lot of deception, a lot of manipulation going on here. So when we look at the character development of our main characters, we're looking for their flaws, right? And how those flaws, the tragic flaw that we find in all tragedies with the main characters, and how those flaws, their inability to recognize certain things or to hear certain things, to see properly, okay, alert us to that flaw. And then we see how, as a direct result of that flaw, there's a downfall. This is, probably most evident initially in Caesar himself. What is Caesar's physical flaw? Remember, we always are looking at the literal and the figurative. So what is the literal physical flaw in Julius Caesar? It's presented to us in a subtle way. I'm wondering if anyone picked up on it. No?
Is he deaf in 1 year?
Yes, he is. Excellent. Yes. And while that's, mentioned, it doesn't seem to be emphasized. The emphasis comes when we move that literal understanding that he's deaf in 1 ear to the more figurative understanding that means he has difficulty hearing, literally, but more than that. And we know that in a number of ways in terms of how he doesn't listen when he is warned. All right? What are the Ides of March?
The feast?
Yes, but I mean, it's one of the more famous lines from the play. Beware the Ides of March. But the Ides of March is an actual date. All right? The Ides of March is the 15th of March. Ides is Latin term meaning division, and it's to emphasize the division, the middle of March. All right? But of course, it's the connotations of Ides of March. I mean, it's obviously a term that's not used to talk about the 15th of March much anymore. But of course, out of this play, it's become a catchword in much of Shakespearean understanding and knowledge. Caesar is warned. Beware the Ides of March. Beware the 15th of May. Does he listen to it? Does he take heed of it?
He doesn't listen.
No. And that, again, has a direct correlation with the fact that he's deaf in 1 ear. We're always looking for these connections to help us see how Shakespeare is emphasizing certain things, emphasizing at times in subtle ways. Okay? So you want to be aware of the Ides of March, and we're going to look at it in a minute, in order to see the flaw in Caesar. And keep in mind as well, we've always looked at the titles. The title of this play is The Tragedy of Julius Caesar, strongly suggesting, as always, that this is a play about Julius Caesar. But Julius Caesar is assassinated halfway through the play. Right? So just like we had a similar discussion regarding Othello, because Iago is such a presence. Who's the real star of the show, if you will. Okay, we have to deal with that again here, but in a different way. And you want to be asking yourself that, just like we did with Othello, as you read through the play. Okay, so be attentive, and who is this play, about? Is it still about Julius Caesar? I mean, often a character, even if they are assassinated, but their presence will still resonate. And is that something that we have here? And again, looking at the literal and the figurative. All right, what Caesar comes to represent, not just who he is as a specific character. But again, this is a play that is dealing with the concept of leadership and ambition. And these are things that are encapsulated in Julius Caesar, alive or dead. All right, let's go take a look at the play itself. As is our usual approach. As always, as much as I know I need to rush a bit with this play, I will still take my time, especially with the opening act. Again, there are a lot of characters here, so be prepared to flip back into your in your editions. Can't see that, right? The edition that you have, hopefully hardcover, at the list of characters. In this play in particular, you're going to find yourself jumping back to fairly frequently. Always remember, one of the things that I find easier is just print up a page of the list of characters and have that in front of you while you're reading, so you don't have to keep flipping back, just to make things a little bit easier, because you need to. What happens in this first scene? What's this about? What are we seeing here? What's transpiring?
The return of Caesar being triumphant.
Return of Caesar in triumph. We know he's coming in triumph because what do we have here with, how are people reacting to his return?
They're celebrating and they're happy.
Okay, now who are celebrating and happy? Right? It's important to realize that, you know, and this, we have to, certain commoners as they're referred to here, right? That's the masses, that's the people. And remember, this becomes a key component of the play in terms of the role of the commoners or the people in decision-making of a government. What about Flavius and Marulus? Are they happy? And who are they? And we have them here, right? That's why we go. And they're tribunes. Tribunes within the Roman hierarchy. They're not commoners, right? They're higher on the hierarchy of positioning in this society. And they're not happy, right? So it's immediately setting this tone and this conflict, right? To alert us that people seem to be quite happy with Caesar, but those higher up in the hierarchy are not. Now, of course, it's Shakespeare, so there's always much more going on here. And one of the things that is interesting in terms of how he portrays these commoners in their interaction with people who seem to have greater authority than they do, right? We see they're referred to as idle creatures get you home. Is this a holiday? What, know you not be mechanical? That you ought not walk upon a laboring day without the sign of your profession? Speak, what trade art thou? So it's really positioning the commoners as being mechanical, that they're viewed as, you know, you just have a job to do. What trade do you have? Why are you not advertising your trade? And you're idle. Why are you being idle when you should be working? And of course, they're being referred to as creatures. What you get here, and it's just can't go through it without pointing out all the punning. This is Shakespeare at his best, playing with words. So what you want to be picking up here is how these commoners are in fact turning things onto the tribunes and toying with them, and in many ways mocking them through wit and intelligence and rhetorical means of responding. It is a bit of a anticipation of the rhetoric devices that Mark Antony is going to utilize in his famous speech. The play with language as a means by which to get a certain reaction from your audience. And in this case, they have to be careful, the commoners, because in the hierarchy, they can't just come up and tell these tribunes, they can't be rude and right in their face, because then they'd be in big trouble. So they play with them through language, right? So what are you, as you say, a cobbler? And answer me directly. A trade, sir, that I hope I may use with a safe conscience, which is indeed, sir, a mender of bad souls. So the play here is on what? He's a cobbler. What is a cobbler?
Someone that fixes shoes.
Right. And what are souls?
The bottom of the shoe.
Yeah.
There you go. But of course, what he's doing here is he's playing with this. He's a mender of bad souls, yeah, literally, the soles of the shoes that need mending. But of course, souls, if it's spelt differently, is talking about individuals and the inner part of individuals. The mender of bad souls, suggesting that it's the commoner has to be a part of helping to deal with the bad souls, the bad people out there. Okay, so you look for this because it comes up frequently in this play. It comes up frequently in all Shakespeare, but here, because this play is so rooted in the play on language and the rhetorical, the ability of the utilization of rhetoric to be so not just persuasive, but at times manipulative. And the consequences that can result from that kind of manipulation. Again, just so you have an idea of it, truly, sir, all that I live by is with my all. What's an all? It's a tool that's used by cobblers. Okay, so I live by.
Like it's some respect with some reverend with respect.
Well, that would be awe.
Oh.
Okay, so this is all, AWL.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so it's in this case, all that I live by is with the awl, a tool that I use to fix shoes with. I meddle with no tradesman's matters nor women's matter, but with all. So he's playing with the awl, which is the tool, and of course, then he's playing here with all. Oops, there. Nor women's matters, but with all matters. Okay, and what this is demonstrating is that with the commoners who are perceived as just being tradesmen and just being superficial, that in fact they have extraordinary power in a republic, right? That is meant to be for the people. And this is important because it speaks directly to Brutus's justifications for his actions. It's for the people. And that's when we see Mark Antony is going to come out, and Caesar. They all appeal in some manner to the people. And the question, one of the many questions we ask as we're going through this is, are they sincere or not? Or are they just manipulating for political gain and political power? Of course, we know they're all there to see Caesar and rejoice in his triumph. This bit here, again, setting the tone, is with Marullus chastising them for what? What's the main argument here as to why they shouldn't be celebrating Caesar? And you know a little bit now about the background. What's up with Pompey here? Why is Pompey brought up? And we saw that Pompey was another one of the leaders, but Caesar has just defeated him. And this is, again, remember, setting things up for us. What he says here, knew you not Pompey? Many a time and oft have you climbed up to the walls and battlements, to towers and windows, yea, to chimney tops, your infants in your arms, and there have sat the livelong day with patient expectation to see great Pompey pass the streets of Rome. And when you saw his chariot but appear, have you not made a universal shout? That Tiber trembled underneath her banks to hear the replication of your sounds made in her concave shores? And do you now put on your best attire? And do you now call out a holiday? And do you now strew flowers in his way that comes in triumph over Pompey's blood? Begone! Run to your houses, fall on your knees, pray to the gods to intermit the plague that needs must light on this ingratitude. What he's saying is, you guys were all here celebrating Pompey and all of Pompey's great victories. Caesar just defeated Pompey, and look how fickle you are. You know, one day it's Pompey, and then you so easily are celebrating Caesar, who just took Pompey, who you loved and adored, and killed him and defeated him. And it speaks to this fickleness, if you will, of the commoners. How they go from one to the other, and how what that is a statement of is how difficult it is to reach the masses. How difficult it is to really convince them. Therefore, what is the best way to proceed in ingratiating yourself with the masses if they seem to be able to change their minds so easily? So they all leave and they decide, what are they going to do? Okay, we're going to go and fix this. Let no images be hung with Caesar's trophies. How about drive away the vulgar from the streets? And of course, the attitude towards the commoners, right? They're creatures and they're vulgar. So we have this class distinction that is exploited here. And we know here as well their alertness to this feast that's going to be celebrated, which I put briefly on that PowerPoint. Okay, so what happens in the second scene? Obviously, I mean, again, though, you're asking yourself when you read this, you know, you're going, well, what, you know, is this important? Is, you know, who are these people? Are they really big characters and so on? It is important for the reasons that we discussed. It's laying that foundation, which really comes to prominence when we see the competing speeches of Brutus and Mark Antony in terms of the effect it has on these commoners who are introduced to us right at the beginning, and are introduced in a very full way. They're witty, they're clever with their words, they're able to, you know, get back at Flavius and company through the play on language, but they're also seemingly, I mean, there's a good point being made here. You know, where's your allegiance? That brings up the, you know, other theme of loyalty, friendship, things like that. These are all here, right? Remember another famous line: "Et tu, Brute?" And you too, Brutus? Last words that Caesar speaks when he recognizes that one of his assassins is his good friend Brutus. All right, how far do you take your loyalties and friendships? Brutus's justification is, you know, it's worth sacrificing my friend, betraying my friend for the good of the people. But we have to look at that. Is it for the good of the people? That's one of the questions we're asking. Remember the idea of ambition. Going back, forget who it was who was talking about Macbeth, right? Macbeth is all about ambition. Well, so is this. And what we look at is trying to determine the people who are accused, particularly Caesar, of having that ambition. But who else is ambitious? Who is consciously seeking power? And who may be subconsciously seeking that same type of power and dressing it up in rationalizations? Okay. All right, here we have Caesar's arrived, and this is for the big ceremony, for the holiday. Of course, take note of the soothsayer. What's a soothsayer?
Someone that could predict the future.
Right. Okay, it's like a fortune teller of sorts. Okay, someone who proclaims or is expected to be able to tell. Again, and in this world, remember, it's back right around the turn of the Common Era. And this is before the advent of, well, it was in the works at the time, Christianity, but again, that's a whole complicated thing into itself. The Romans were worshiping multiple gods. And in that environment of, multiple gods and gods of the Roman coming out, being derived from the concept of the Greek gods, lends itself very much to superstitions, belief in the supernatural, and soothsayers therefore carry a lot of weight and were considered people to be listened. It's like the prophets from biblical stories. You are taking big risks if you don't listen and anticipate that what they're saying, what they're predicting, what they're forecasting is going to happen. And of course, that ties into whether, if those of you familiar with Macbeth, okay, if this is what is predicted to happen, is it going to happen regardless of what I do? Or can I, through my free will, change what is predicted to happen? Predestination versus free will. How much control do we have over our own destinies? All right. Another common theme in many of Shakespeare's plays. We get here as well, it's establishing the relationship, an important one, between Mark Antony and Caesar. Okay? So we have this, stand you directly in Antonius's way when he doth run his course, right? What did I remember from the PowerPoint? What is the significance if you touch someone, if you're a runner in this event? Right? If you're a woman and you're pregnant, it'll make your pregnancy easier, safer. If you are infertile, if you're unable to get pregnant, the belief, superstitious belief, predicated on the worship of pagan gods and so on, is that if you touch them, you will become fertile. You will be able to bear children. And the significance of having this here and having Caesar asking his wife to touch tells us, and this is important in terms of the idea of a ruler, a singular ruler, a monarch, a king, because a king, once you break down the triad of leadership and decision making and policy making, and you leave it in one hand, this is what monarchy is, then who is going to be the heir of that king? Right? We look at that in the British monarchy, right? It goes by the children and so on. And what this is letting us know here is that Caesar doesn't have an heir, and that they're obviously wanting to produce an heir, but they're having difficulty. So now they're reaching out to this superstitious belief that if she touches someone who's a runner in this ceremony, that will help her to be able to get pregnant. And of course, on top of that, it's specifically Mark Antony. Again, showing the bond that Antony has with Caesar. Okay? Remember not to touch, in your speed, to touch Caparina. For our elders say, the Baron touched in this holy chase to shake off their sterile curse. Okay? I shall remember, Antony responds, and this is key, and it's speaking, and this is, I'm emphasizing this with Mark Antony because what we're gathering here, the information we're gathering here, helps us better understand one of Brutus's flaws. When Caesar says, do this, it is performed. So that tells us that Antony is an ally of Caesar, but it tells us even more. It tells us that Antony is seemingly already treating Caesar as a sole leader, ruler, king, dictator. Caesar says, do this, it's done. No questions asked. And that's, of course, exactly what the conspirators seemingly are concerned about. Caesar's ambition to become sole ruler, dictator. And they don't want that because that will break up the republic. The republic is what has these different branches of government as a check and balance, all geared to do what's best for the commoners, the people. Right? The United States is a republic, at least on paper. Okay. The danger here, and of course, as it played out in actual historical situation, is as a result of what transpires after the assassination of Caesar, ironically, because it's exactly what the conspirators are trying to avoid, is the Roman Republic becomes the Roman Empire with an emperor. All right? And that's what the conspirators are trying to prevent. We get then here the soothsayer, and note again, because this comes back to being attentive to the fact of what he can hear, Caesar, and what he can't. The soothsayer is calling out Caesar's name. And who calls? Bid every noise be still, peace yet again. Who is it in the press that calls on me? I hear a tongue shriller, right? This is important. Than all the music. And so this soothsayer, in calling out Caesar's name in this there's a lot of people here, but the soothsayer is getting Caesar's attention. So he is able to hear the shrill voice of the soothsayer calling out his name. And so speak. What is it you have to say? The famous line, beware the Ides of March. Caesar, what man is this? And he's told by Brutus, the soothsayer bids you beware the Ides of March. Okay, set him before me, let me see his face. What sayest thou to me now? Speak once again. He brings him right up close. So he's really, it's not like he dismisses it right away. He brings him right in close to him, and he says again, beware the Ides of March. Caesar's reaction, again, thinking of tragic flaws. Oh, he's just a dreamer. Let us leave him pass. He dismisses him. As a dreamer, dreams are important in this play. The significance of how dreams are interpreted, again, leading to the superstitions and everything else that are aroused by dreams. Little side note, the life of a teacher. I had a dream, woke me up last night, and I couldn't fall back to sleep, and trying to figure it out. And it seems obvious now, but of course, in the middle of the night, you wake up from a dream. What was I doing? Because in the dream, me and a number of my colleagues over at the university were dressing up like soldiers, like Rambo, and we all had these monstrous guns, machine guns, Call of Duty type stuff. And we were all heading towards the university. You know how dreams are weird. I don't know who our specific target was, but it was so disturbing because I kept losing my gun. I couldn't find it. I couldn't hold it properly. You know, dreams are weird that way. And I was having trouble getting to the university, but I knew I had to be there, and I knew I had to be there with the gun because I was going to be late to meet my colleagues. And I woke up and I was so disturbed. I went, what, Jesus, man, I couldn't fall back to sleep. I went, what is this dream about? And then, of course, I went, oh my God, it's Julius Caesar. The impact of spending as much time as I've spent with this in the last couple of days. I bring it up because dreams are being brought up. He is a dreamer, and we're going to see other dreams as we go. and the way that dreams can impact us. So important here is that Caesar ignores him. He's not listening to him. He's not heeding his advice. And of course, he should. And it is significant as well that it is Brutus who repeats it. And Brutus is aware that the soothsayer is telling him, beware the Ides of March, the 15th of March. So everyone leaves, and it's just Brutus and Cassius. And what happens in this, what's this? It's a lengthy transaction between the two. What's going on here? What are they talking about?
Cassius is trying to convince Brutus that he's as good as a leader as Caesar.
Right, he does get to that, but what's the first thing Cassius is doing here? He's trying to feel out Brutus. Right? He's trying to figure out, can Brutus be persuaded to join us in our join me and my fellow conspirators? Doesn't know yet. Right? This again, having to read people, understand them, especially when you're doing such nefarious things as plotting to assassinate a leader. So Cassius is going, Brutus, I do observe you now of late. I have not from your eye that gentleness and show of love as I was wont to have. He's not talking about here any about assassinations. He's just trying to get a feel because he notices that Brutus is not really himself. And Brutus is saying, oh, Cassius, don't worry. Be not deceived. Deception. Giving us a little taste of what's to come. I turn the trouble of my countenance merely upon myself. Okay, and what he's emphasizing, nor construe any further my neglect. It's not you. Okay, again, he says, which gives some soil perhaps to my behaviors, but let not therefore my good friends be grieved, among which number Cassius you be one. Nor construe any further my neglect. Then, and key, that poor Brutus with himself at war. Okay, so what's that telling us? He's at war with himself, which means he's mulling something over. Something is disturbing him. Something is causing some turmoil within him. He's not telling us what it is. But of course, if we look at Cassius coming there trying to feel his friend Brutus out, when Brutus reveals that he has some inner turmoil, he's at war with himself over something. And that's the reason why he's not showing his love of other men. Then Cassius is seeing an opening. Okay? And what he goes here again, we just don't have time. I wish we did to go through it bit by bit. For the eye see not the self, but by reflection, by some other things. What he's doing here is he's engaging Brutus to become, in a sense, Brutus's mirror. Look to me, and then we can look together at this war that you're battling within yourself. And of course, Cassius's goal here is to find out, is he thinking the way we are? Is he concerned about Caesar? He says here, I, your glass, will modestly discover to yourself that of yourself which you yet know not of. I can help you really get in touch. And if you think about it, it's quite astute. Often we when we're mulling something over, if we're having difficulty making a decision, or things are bothering us, and and we keep it all inside, and it impacts us psychologically. If we have someone to talk to about it, it becomes clearer rather than us just mulling over it ourselves. And in that clarity, we're able to recognize what is really the problem. Articulating it makes it clearer, right? So it's no longer the turmoil. It's, oh, that's exactly what it is. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't had someone to draw it out of me. And that's the role that Cassius plays here. But of course, it's not just, he's not just doing that to help Brutus. He's trying to find out to see whether or not he can recruit Brutus into the conspiracy. And so during this, right, we get this, and this helps to bring it out, be attentive to it, the flourishing and the shouting, right? Remember, Caesar's left the stage. It's just Cassius and Brutus now. The flourish and shout reminds us that there's things going on because it's the big ceremony and everything else, this holiday. And what means this shouting, and then we get it here. I do fear the people chose Caesar for their king. So he's revealing to Cassius his fear. And Cassius immediately, if you fear it, then must I think you would not have it so. And this is where we see why there's this war within Brutus himself. I would not, Cassius, yet I love him well. But wherefore do you hold me here so long? What is it that you would impart to me? If it be aught toward the general good. General good, meaning the good for Rome and its citizens and people. Set honor in one eye and death in the other, and I will look on both indifferently. For let the gods so speed me as I love the name honor more than I fear death. This concept, the idea of honor, becomes paramount here, right? If you, those of you who have read through Act 3 in Mark Antony's speech, he plays on this honor brilliantly when he is talking about Brutus. And it becomes a challenge because the question is Brutus, through his actions, engaged in the honorable thing to do? Even if he rationalizes it by saying, this is what I believe is best for the people, much of the decision-making by the conspirators is predicated on their anticipation of what Caesar will do. Right? And that's where it becomes much trickier. It's not like Caesar's out there slaughtering the citizens, playing the fiddle while Rome burns type thing. It's they're seeing a pattern and they're going to try to stop it before it gets too far. That's a lot trickier than trying to remove a tyrannical leader who's already clearly demonstrated that he or she is a tyrant, at which stage the kind of revolution that involves assassination would have the people's support, which is essential for any kind of revolution that won't descend into exactly what it's trying to prevent, which is a controlling dictatorship. So we have this emphasis on honor and virtue, okay? And Cassius plays on that at this stage. Always be looking to see how people are persuading others in this play, and how that persuasion is often through these rhetorical devices involving manipulation, and who's more prone and susceptible to that kind of manipulation. So Cassius says, well, you are an honorable man, and I respect that virtue you have. So let me tell you, honor is the subject of my story. Right? So it shows Cassius to be very astute at picking up on things and using them to his advantage to persuade Brutus. And what he talks about here, which is his argument, and it is a complex one, and I again just don't have enough time to delve into it in great depth. But the thing to keep in mind is the fear is that Caesar's going to now proclaim himself to be an emperor, a king, a type of god, all powerful, one ruler. The argument that Cassius makes here is that any such idea of one person being almost godlike is dangerous and wrong. And the way he makes his argument is he recounts when he and Caesar were swimming, and Caesar cried, "Help me, Cassius, or I'll sink," and Cassius had to go and save him. He brings up as well when he was sick and he behaved like a sick girl with coward lips. Is this someone who is now become a god? So they're very much, Cassius, and we see that Brutus agrees with him, are convinced that they've seen indications that this is the direction Caesar's taking. They're so convinced that they're going to assassinate him. But remember that this is in the context of Caesar coming back into Rome triumphant and very much seemingly being worshipped by the citizens, by the commoners, by the people of Rome. The irony, of course, is that they are planning on killing Caesar because they think that Caesar will be bad for those commoners, because it'll take away the commoner's ability to be a part of the system, because Caesar will plant himself as ultimate ruler, which goes against the concept of the political concept of a republic. But the people seem to like Caesar at this point. But that's the argument Cassius makes here. And again, keeping in mind that what's going on over here with the shout and the flourish, we don't see what's going on, but we're hearing it. And Brutus, again, another general shout. I do believe that these applauses are for some new honors that are heaped on Caesar, which of course is exactly what they're concerned about. And again, he goes on to, the dear fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. Okay, another famous line from Shakespeare. Men at some time are masters of their fates. Comes back to, again, the free will, the ability of individuals to take control over their fates. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, right, but in ourselves. The fault is not because of some supernatural ideas of prophets and ghosts and all this stuff, which was so commonly believed at the time, but in ourselves. Therefore, if the fault is within ourselves, we in ourselves have the ability to rectify the fault without having to rely on outside forces to do so. Okay, so when could they say till now that talked of Rome, that her wide walls encompass but one man? Okay, the argument continues here about having just one ruler. And then Brutus, because the focus at this stage is Brutus, this is Cassius again, bringing Brutus into the fold. Not necessarily, it's not pure manipulation. It's feeding off of what he recognizes is going on within Brutus's thoughts. This bit here, Brutus says, that you do love me, I am nothing jealous. What you would work me to, I have some aim. How I have thought of this and of these times I shall recount hereafter. For this present, for now, I would not, so with love I might entreat you, be any further moved. What you have said I will consider. what you have to say, I will with patience hear, and find a time both meet to hear and answer such high things. Till then, my noble friend, chew upon this. Brutus had rather be a villager than repute himself a son of Rome. What's he saying there? Okay, it harks back to his concept of honor and his loyalty. Yes, sorry, I keep forgetting the chats up here. Yes, that he is loyal. Loyal to whom? Loyal to what? Because loyalty now, it becomes, as we've already understand, it's a huge issue in this play. But where are your loyalties placed? What Brutus is saying here is his loyalty is to Rome, not to any individual. Right? It's a emphasis on this idea of the republic, all right, and the democratic principles entailed in that republic that we must. It's not even democratic principles; it's a little more complex than that, but it is very much geared towards what is best for the state over the individual. Caesar is his friend. I'm willing to sacrifice, and I'm willing to sacrifice myself, he's saying here. I'd rather just be a villager, give up my status, become a commoner, than to do anything that would question my loyalty to Rome. And Cassius here, we'll see this especially with Margaret. I am glad that my weak words have struck, but thus much show of fire in Brutus. And of course, his words were not weak. Right? This humility topos is everywhere in this play. It's a rhetorical device. You know, I'm not really, I really don't know how to, you know, talk, but of course they are talking. And I don't know how to, I don't have your gift for speeches and so on, but of course they do. And it's a way to ingratiate yourself with others. And then we have here, of course, the return of Caesar comes in. Brutus, I will do so, but look you, Cassius, the angry spot doth glow on Caesar's brow. All right, so they know something's up, he's angry. Cascas will tell us what the matter is, right, because they weren't there, they didn't see what transpired. And then we have Mark Antony and Caesar coming in together, again, famous lines from the play and from Shakespeare in general. Let me have men about me that are fat, sleek-headed men, and such as sleep o' nights. And then this one, yon Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous. Again, famous line from the play. Yon Cassius has a lean and hungry look, and that he thinks too much. And such men are dangerous. Now, what's intriguing about this, other than it's become a very recognizable phrase, is what it suggests about Caesar. And when we're trying to figure out, is he in his ambition actually looking to become that kind of dictator that Brutus fears he will? And what's revealing here is, yes, the lean and hungry look, that's suggesting ambition that he's seen in Cassius. But then there's this, he thinks too much. And such men are dangerous. Ambitious people who think are dangerous. Dangerous to what? Dangerous to Caesar. And it's particularly so when you look at the history of dictatorships and one-person rule, is people who think too much then can start recognizing the flaws in such a type of government. And they're usually the ones who will initiate rebellious behavior. And often what you find in, again, the history of dictatorships and so on, is a attempt, in any case, to suppress the ability for people to think too much. So there's censorship, right? There's the removal of books that contain ideas that could be detrimental to the security of that dictator's position as ruler. One of the reasons why this phrase has become so famous. Of course, Mark Antony says, fear him not, Caesar. He's not dangerous. He is a noble Roman and well given. You know, this is telling us a bit about Antony, because Antony doesn't seem to recognize that there's any danger being posed by Cassius, but Caesar does, and Caesar's right. Antony's not. And Caesar, again, and again, the other big thing here is, you know, I wish they were fat. Would he were fatter? Why fatter? What's that about? Yeah, content, you know, lazy, doesn't, you know, the idea if you're fat means you have you got a happy, lackadaisical type of life, right? Again, it's of course in direct contrast to the lean and hungry look, right? Fat is the opposite of that. You're not lean if you're fat, and you're not hungry because you're eating all the time, because you're content. And those people, Caesar is suggesting, they're easy to control. They don't pose a threat to me. And it gives a view into Caesar's attitude of keeping people happy and content in the most obvious ways. That will ensure that they won't come and question other things that are going on within that type of political system. And then we have here, which was picked up, someone pointed out, but it is very important. Again, he goes on in his concerns regarding Cassius, and therefore are they very dangerous, right? Such, what he says is, he hears no music. Seldom he smiles, and smiles in such a sort as if he mocked himself and scorned his spirit. That could be moved to smile at anything. Right? He doesn't listen to music. He's rarely smiling. That's that lean and hungry look. Such men as he be never at heart's ease, whilst they behold a greater than themselves ambition. He is, again, remember I mentioned that big part of this is we're looking to see the flaws in characters. We're looking to see how one character is able or not able to recognize what other characters' traits are. And in this political intrigue of this world of Julius Caesar, where everyone has to watch their back, knowing who your allies are, who your friends are, and who your enemies are becomes paramount in a world where it's well known there is a tremendous amount of deception. And this is a demonstration of Caesar's ability to read others quite well. This is a good read on Cassius. Very dangerous. More dangerous than you realize, Caesar. I rather tell thee what is to be feared than what I fear, for always I am Caesar. The always I am Caesar's, again, is a hint towards his idea that he is going to be ruler and put himself as ruler for life, a dictator. And then he says, come on my right hand, for this ear is deaf, and tell me truly what thou thinkest of him. So the deaf ear is a physical flaw, but of course, remember while he's very astute in reading Cassius, he does not listen to others, doesn't hear others. So the literal spills out into the figurative. This is again, we're almost get as much through this as we can before the breaks. Then we're going to move fairly quickly after that. This is a recounting of what transpired while Cassius and Brutus were talking, and Cassius was bringing Brutus over to his way, his ideas, and they heard the flourishing and the shouting off stage. Now it's being related to them what happened. And what happened? Anyone? I'm doing all the talking. I want feedback. We're on Act 1, so you've at least read this. What happened? What was going on with Caesar while Brutus and Cassius were having their conversation that is being related to them by Casca? Oh, you guys are tough this morning. I mean, you know me, I go talking about this all day long. But next week, I'm going to want more participation because, again, I'm pushing you hard, I know, but I really want you to try to finish the entire play next week. We need to cover it. I need to be sure that you guys are getting what's going on here because you are responsible for this on the final exam. So he's recounting what was happening. He was talking about being offered what? The crown? Remember? Who offered him the crown? Right? He was offered the crown 3 times. And it was Mark Antony who was offering him the crown. Did he accept it?
No, you refused 3 times.
He refuses 3 times.
He didn't.
Why? It's a tough question. Why did he refuse it? If we're anticipating that he is so ambitious, then it would seem like, all right, then he's going to accept the crown. That would seem to confirm that he is ambitious. But he refuses the crown 3 times.
Maybe he didn't want to be a king.
Maybe he didn't want to be a king because maybe there's a higher position. Maybe it wasn't the right kind of crown, because we're going to find out later, when even though it's used as deception, that the Senate is going to offer him a crown. Is the crown not enough for him? Or, as is just put up in the chat, is it to gain the trust? The trust of who or whom?
The people?
The people. Because note how they respond to it. Now, it is a difficult passage and event to fully unpack, and it can be interpreted in different ways. And that's why it's so delicious. But clearly, it is showing that to the people, no. I'm not worried. It isn't. I'm not saying it is. Is it him saying, oh, no, I'm not worthy? But we've already seen indications that he believes himself to be even more worthy. And if he's doing it consciously to say, no, I'm not worthy, is it an attempt on his part to ingratiate himself with the masses. They're going to like that. Allay their fears that maybe he does want to be a dictator. But then, of course, with these masses and commoners, maybe they want that kind of a leader. Remember, we've already discovered they're a bit fickle. But complicating the situation of these three refusals is that after the third time, and then, let's get this up, and then he offered it a third time, he put it in the third time by, and still as he refused it, the rabblement hooted and clapped their chapped hands and threw up their sweaty nightcaps. So we get a clear picture of what Casca's opinion of the masses are, right? This is derogatory type of language, chapped hands, sweaty nightcaps, and uttered such a deal of stinking breath because Caesar refused the crown that it had almost choked Caesar. And again, there's a bit of ambiguity here in terms of how it's being described because we weren't there. Brutus and Cassius weren't there either. It's being recounted to us and to them. So are they clapping and hooting because they're happy he won't take the crown? Because they don't want him to take the crown? Or are they happy and hooted and clapped as a means to encourage him to actually accept the crown? Or is it that they're recognizing how he really cares about the people and how humble he is by not accepting the crown? Whatever the reasons, Caesar falls down and has, we see in detail, basically, remember we saw a bit of this in Othello? He fell down in the marketplace and foamed at the mouth.
Fit.
Yeah. So an epileptic fit, some kind of fit. I mean, not just fell down, he didn't just faint. The foaming at the mouth is pretty revealing.
Please, I have a question.
Mhm.
Yeah, why is it that they keep on being attacked by such a disease, the epilepsy?
It again, remember we're dealing with literature, so it is to alert us that there's something faulty in their constitution.
Okay.
Okay, that's again, whenever we see it, it's like it can be as simple and as subtle as he's deaf in one ear, or it can be something where he falls into foaming at the mouth type of epileptic fit. That alerts us there's something wrong with him. Physically, yeah, but more because it's Shakespeare and it's literature, more about his character. There's a flaw there. There's turmoil. And of course, it speaks to nature, human nature, worldly nature. It's not normal. And of course, can be also tied into what we're going to see after the break when, things are really bizarre in Rome, right? With lions roaming the streets and apparitions appearing to really emphasize that there's something wrong transpiring in Rome. That the gods, in the idea of the pagan gods, are revealing how unhappy they are with the way things are transpiring. Okay, so we're just about at break time. Again, this could be really, could spend so much time with it, but note what he says here. I know not what you mean by that, but I am sure Caesar fell down. And what he says here, just draw your attention to it. If the tag rag people did not clap him and hiss him, according as he pleased and displeased them, as they used to do the players in the theater, I am no true man. What's that revealing? Another important theme, especially in relation to how the commoners and the people are portrayed in terms of how they view the political leadership and so on, is basically he's saying that the way that the ragtag people, again, is derogatory terms for the commoners, reacted to Caesar's whole turning down the crown 3 times and then falling into his pit, is they're reacting as they would if they were at the theater, suggesting that what they're seeing in these political figures for them is the same as what they would see if they went to a play, which is there for entertainment, diminishing the importance and the magnitude of what politicians actually are meant to be there for. The reason it's important is if there's a recognition that the masses are seeing the political and the politics and the politicians as a form of entertainment, therefore not having a full grasp on all the implications that are involved in these people who will determine policy and so on, that those politicians, in recognizing that in the masses, will be theatrical in their behavior as a means to persuade those masses to join them and be on their side. It reduces the politics, so important to determining the future of the country, to entertainment, to theatrics, which then, of course, blends into the idea, okay, when we read literature and art and view art, it's not real, right? We've talked about this. It's giving us different ways to approach and view our society. And often it's successful because it explores those ineffable questions of life while at the same time entertaining. And that keeps an audience involved so that the message can resonate even if it's not just being banged over the head. Okay. Yeah, we're going to take our break. I'll touch on a couple more things here, but I want to move forward. Boy, there's so much. But let's take our break. It's 10 o'clock. I'm anticipating that this, okay, yes, good question. So the reason we're going through this quickly, again, because we've missed so many Mondays, is I want to ensure that we have enough time to deal with Lear. All right, so we will be starting King Lear not next week, in 2 weeks. Next week we finish up with Julius Caesar, then we start King Lear, and yes, you will be having more assignments. Right? I told you these small assignments. Exactly what I'm going to do with them, I'm reassessing because to give you the assignment in class time takes away our time to be able to discuss the plays. Yes.
I cannot see that, like the thing you sent us for the correction for the assignment.
Yes.
It's very hard to. I couldn't see anything.
Oh, you couldn't see my comments and the grade?
Not at all.
Okay.
I can't even open it.
Okay. Okay. There's been a couple of others. This is the way that I'm returning them. If any of you weren't able to open it, or if you opened it and all you saw was your response without my comments and without a grade, you need to let me know through Mayo, because there's been a couple of others like this, and once I resend it through Mayo, they're able to open it.
Okay.
Okay, so you're not alone. There's been 2 others. I don't know if it was from this class or the other classes. So I don't know. It has to do with the different computer systems or whatnot. So if any of you received that, you can't open it. alert me to that through Mayo. Okay?
And my second question, how did we do with the exam, with midterm? Are we gonna have our results
Oh, the
soon? Are
midterm,
we
yeah,
okay, or-
I'm going to try to have it for you for next week. Be patient with that. It's usually, when it comes to the exams, about 2 weeks to get them back, because I have all the other ones as well. But I have looked them over. It's the way I proceed is I always read through everything before I mark them, and then I come back so I can look at them in more detail. Yeah, I mean, the bigger thing that I'm going to be looking at and determining is in terms of the writing, if we need to spend some time doing some writing exercises to prepare for the final exam. All right, but I will be doing my absolute best to have them back to you before next Monday's class. Okay? And the final will be on King Lear or Julius Caesar and King Lear. It will be on both.
We can choose one of them, I'm assuming, yeah?
I haven't decided yet. Yeah, it's not, no, you shouldn't anticipate that. There may be, what I'm actually thinking of doing, because it lends itself to it, is either having you answer 2 questions, like one short answer, one essay, or, because it is a final exam, or having questions where you have to compare the 2. So you need to be familiar with both. Okay? That's why really important. I know it's a lot of reading, but try to get through Julius Caesar by next week. And I will make time to prepare to have time for us to discuss the specifics of the exam before we take the exam. I'm looking to see if we, anyways, it's bizarre when we're online. I mean, ideally, I'd rather not have the exam on our last day, so we could use that last day as a review, but we may have to, but I'll take care of that. Okay? And again, for the exit exam, people are asking, keep in mind that the date, I think I told you, as I understand, is December 16th. But I still have to get confirmation for that and how the exam is going to be done. If it's going to be done online, which I presume would be the case now, unless things change between now and then. So as soon as I have the information, I will post for all of you the specifics about the exit exam. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, and yeah, and if any of you have taken the exit exam, then you don't have to. You've taken it and passed it. You're done. You don't have to worry about it. But I think most of you still have to take that exit exam because it wasn't offered last year. I don't think because
Yeah,
of the pandemic.
a lot of people didn't take it. Maybe
Yeah.
who knows, they might even give us a credit for like last year.
Yeah. So as soon as I have the information, I'll be posting it. Okay. No. Okay. So let me clarify. When they're asking about the exit exam, that's the provincial exam that everyone has to take in order to graduate from CEGEP. That's separate from anything we do in this class, other than learning how to read well and write well to pass the exam. Okay? So when I talk about our final exam, that's our exam on Lear and Julius Caesar. The exit exam is something different that is done by the province. And it's separate from any of your actual classes. Okay? Okay, so let's take our break. It's 10:08, 10:35. I know we like to have our half hours. So 10:35, okay? No later than that. And, as always, come back with questions or concerns. I know right now it's a lot, especially for those of you who are a little behind in the reading. But we'll get there. And remember as well, I'm going to be working on more PowerPoints and documents specifically for Julius Caesar, because I know we have limited time. And I will take it into account, everybody, on the final exam, that we did not spend as much time on Julius Caesar as we did on Othello, obviously, and as I plan on with King Lear. Okay? So I will take it into account. We good? Okay, so 10:35. we're back here and we'll try to race through and get to Act 3. I'll see you all shortly. There we are. So let's get back to it. We're going to go a little fast. I keep saying that, I know, and as you've all probably gathered, it's so hard for me to go fast. But again, I will make sure that you have, that's why with the PowerPoints and everything else, that you'll have a lot of material you can use in getting a better understanding of the play. So, all right, let's get into this third scene. It's an important one because what's happening here, right? Let's start with the obvious. Right? Remember, always be attentive to the little the information we're given before the scene. We have thunder and lightning. Anytime we see that, whether it's a short story or whether it's a play, that is, again, nature. If we see thunder and lightning, that is suggestive of turmoil. It's a storm. And the storms, again, are literal and figurative. In this case, we have the thunder and lightning. And what accompanies it? What are people seeing? It's a very eerie description of what's happening in Rome. What's going on here? And what are people seeing in the streets?
Lions and eagles and people on fire.
Yeah. I mean, this is, you know, it's not just there's a storm and or you know, a monstrous storm. It's really bizarre things are happening. Things that transcend what would normally just be a storm. It's suggesting a disruption in the universe, if you will. Okay, it's mentioned here, right? Are not you moved when all the sway of earth shakes like a thing unfurled? All right. Now, did I go through a tempest, dropping fire? Fire is raining down. Either there is civil strife in heaven. Okay, so important it says civil strife because that's what we're dealing with in this play, as you'll see when we get towards the end. Civil unrest. Civil unrest in heaven, where the gods live, or else the world too saucy with the gods incenses them to send destruction. Are the gods sending down fire because they're so disappointed with what's going on in the world? It's always, in Shakespeare, we see this often, the reflection of whether it's, you know, just the storms and the thunder and lightning, or even more so when we move into the supernatural, and then it's gods are involved, and it's chaos, it's turmoil. And yes, not since my sword against the Capitol, I met a lion who glared upon me and went surly by without annoying me. So it's not just that he met a lion in the streets, but the lion doesn't even attack him. A heap 100 ghastly women transformed with their fear, who swore they saw men all in fire walk up and down the streets. I mean, this is, you know, right out of you know, Edgar Allan Poe type stuff. It's you know, very noticeably playing with the supernatural, and the supernatural is related to natural storms as well. How does one interpret these bizarre happenings? All right, and this is Cicero saying, but men may construe things after their fashion, clean from the purpose of the things themselves. What's that telling us? What's he saying here?
He doesn't believe the signs.
Not so much that he doesn't believe the signs, as much as that the signs are open to interpretation. So are these, is all this happening because there's a concern about Caesar becoming king? Or are all these things happening because there's plots to kill Caesar? right? This is, you know, it's the interpretation of facts, right? And it's something that, you know, we are familiar with, and it's kind of a shout out to us in that, you know, we're reading this play and we're trying to interpret it, recognizing that there are different ways of interpreting it. And we tend to construe things after our own fashion. Of course, we as students of literature and art have certain guidelines which you have to adhere to in order to pursue our interpretations. But even within those guidelines, it allows for different interpretations. Still always have to be predicated on the evidence from the text. In this case, you know, how do we interpret these goings on? What does it mean? And again, the references to the heavens. Those that have known the earth so full of faults. It is a reflection that there are faults, but of course that's not specific. The earth is so full of faults, but you know, there's a lot going on here. Where is the fault? This is, again, we have the conspirators who think that Caesar's the fault, but at the same time, they're embarking on a type of regicide, which would be, you know, considered abhorrent. You can't kill the leader. You can't take the law into your own hands like that. And who are you to make that decision? And it speaks as well to the interpretation that the conspirators have of what Caesar is up to. This is how they're reading it, and we'll see again. I don't know if we'll get there today, but Mark Antony's speech is, you know, he has a different interpretation. But wherefore did so much tempt the heavens? It is the part of men to fear and tremble when the most mighty gods by token send such dreadful heralds to astonish us. All they can say with certainty is something is amiss. And the big question is, what precisely is amiss? And that's where the conflict comes in. Here, warning onto again, talking about the monstrous state, but what, again, is monstrous about it? People are disagreeing. Our father Cassius, right? Our father's minds are dead, meaning, remember, this is coming out of the Republic, right? The Roman Republic, and those who established it. The concern is the Republic is being destroyed by Caesar, because Caesar's going to turn it into what it eventually becomes, which is an empire where you have a one rule system. Then this is revealed to us, and it's very important because it lends itself to, again, this interpretation. Indeed, they say the senators tomorrow mean to establish Caesar as king or emperor, right? The king is a shout out to the times of Shakespeare, right? Whether it's kings or monarchy. And he shall wear his crown by sea and land in every place, save here in Italy. Again, the going on what this suggests, but life, being weary of these worldly bars, never lacks power to dismiss itself, right? So it's revealing, right? Ending the life. So every bondsman in his own hand bears the power to cancel his captivity. So every bondsman in his own hand bears the power. Again, coming back to the idea of the power of individual will to make changes, to control one's own destiny. Of course, that's a concept that's being put forth here when there are clearly outside forces that have tremendous power. Raining down fire, lions in the street. Once again, it's this conflict between individual will and predestination. What controls us? How do we have control over our own destiny? So Cassius here again, and why should Caesar be a tyrant then? Poor man, I know he would not be a wolf, but that he sees the Romans are but sheep. Now this is the big argument. Is it being done, the conspiracy, for the benefit of the Roman people? What rubbish and what awful when it serves for the base matter to illuminate so vile a thing as Caesar. Cassius is quite clear. But we have to also be questioning Cassius's motivations. Again, always reminding yourselves of the theme of ambition. Is it ambition on the part of Cassius in that he wants more power? Or is it another kind of ambition in that he just doesn't want to have anyone there who has more power than he does? In other words, he'd be satisfied with the power he has. He doesn't want someone putting him lower by taking more power. Again, it's hard at this stage for most of you, if not all of you, to make a final assessment because you have to finish the play first before you can make those final assessments. They're talking about how they are working the conspiracy. I have moved already some certain of the noblest minded Romans to undergo with me an enterprise of honorable, dangerous consequence. So at this point, when you're reading, continue your reading, always look for these catchwords. Honorable, all right, loyalty. So much of that is necessary for understanding how the plot evolves, how the characters develop, and also always remember where are the flaws. Setting up a meeting on Pompey's porch, again, the significance of Pompey, there is the suggestion that these conspirators are still remaining somewhat loyal to Pompey, but of course, that's neither here nor there because Pompey cannot come back. And then again, Cinna saying to Cassius, "Oh Cassius, if you could but win the noble Brutus to our party." Why the emphasis on having Brutus?
Everyone likes him.
Yeah. Okay, so again, you're seeing how the development of the revolt is predicated on logic to a large extent, and we have to ensure that we will be successful. We can't just kill them. It's regime change, if you will, in a sense. Not necessarily how we understand it today, but the idea is we need to ensure that once we commit this act, once we kill Caesar, that we will have the people behind us. Because if all that people respond by thinking we're just monsters for killing their leader, we can't succeed. Right? That could make things worse. So the emphasis on bringing Brutus on board is because Brutus is well liked everywhere. Seemingly meaning that that's a great strength that Brutus has. But remember, we're looking for the weaknesses as well. And we have to watch Brutus very carefully. And again, 3 parts of him is ours already. He sits high in all people's hearts, confirming what you were just saying. And that which would appear offense in us, his countenance, like richest alchemy, will change to virtue and worthiness. Does everyone understand? Now, again, it's Shakespearean language, but that's what's being proclaimed here. Because he sits high in all people's hearts, that which would appear offense in us, if people are offended by us, because we're not as well liked, all right, with Brutus on board, like alchemy, he'll change everyone hating us for killing Caesar, because Brutus will bring this idea of virtue that it was a virtuous thing to do, a proper thing to do. So the need for Brutus to be on board. Act 2. And we have Brutus, who is reflecting. And here becomes something I think that we must be attentive to, because it really speaks to the kind of thinking that Brutus is engaged with in terms of why he's willing to go so far. Okay? It must be by his death, and for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn at him, but for the general. He would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question. The operative thing here is might. And this is problematic. It's anticipating that with the power that Caesar will gain by being made king by the Senate, is that going to change his nature? Remember, Brutus and he are friends. Brutus likes Caesar, but he's concerned that he will change. There's the question, which strongly hints at the thinking from Brutus is he hasn't changed yet. He's seen signs of the change, but it hasn't fully blossomed yet. And that's a problem, because that's speculation. How can you know for sure unless you actually see him engaged in tyrannical behavior? But if you wait to see it, it will be too late, and he will have consolidated his power. So the opportunity presents itself at this stage. And is that right then? Because what if you're wrong? It is a question. There's no absolute here. So if you're wrong, then you're killing Caesar unjustly. And this is what Brutus is mulling over. But when he once attains the utmost round, and then unto the ladder turns his back, right? The imagery, he's mounting the ladder up to this place of being king. Once he's up on top of the ladder, turns his back, looks in the clouds, scorning the base degrees by which he did ascend. Once he gets up here, he's not going to care about what's down here. And down here are the Romans, are the commoners, are the people. And therefore think him as a serpent's egg, right? So the serpent, right? The association with serpent. The poor snake has had a bum rap for a long time. Think of him as a serpent, negative, dangerous, tempter, right? Garden of Eden stuff. And therefore think him as a serpent's egg. Okay, again, consolidating this what he's mulling here as an egg, not yet hatched. But once it hatches, it'll be a serpent. Think of him as the serpent's egg, which hatched would, as his kind, grow mischievous. So therefore, let's kill him in his shell. Okay, this is important because it's not as strong an argument to commit murder. It's anticipating what he will become, not dealing with what he actually is at this time. But there's a logic to it, because if we wait until the egg hatches, it'll be too late. It's quite a dilemma. And then we have, again, the Ides of March, because remember, Brutus was there when the soothsayer told Caesar, beware the Ides of March. and is not tomorrow the Ides of March. So he's remembering that as well. Superstition abounds here. Yeah, give me some time. I may read. Okay, Brutus, thou sleepest awake. Again, remember, we saw earlier, we didn't discuss it, but Cassius, still to ensure that Brutus will come in, is now manipulating situations, passing around letters, right? On one hand, to test Brutus's resolve, and also to manipulate him to some extent by reminding him how much he is adored by the people. Is good, go to the gate, somebody knocks, and he says again, since Cassius first did wet me against Caesar, I have not slept. So again, it's a dilemma. Between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first motion, all the interim is like phantasma. Okay. The acting of the dreadful thing and the first motion, the in-between, before you actually do it, it becomes a very phantasma type of existence, because you're in a world of uncertainty, or a hideous dream, as he says. The genius and the mortal instruments are then in council, and the state of man, like to a little kingdom, suffers then the nature of an insurrection. The turmoil that's within Brutus as he's trying to make a decision. O conspiracy, shamest thou to show thy dangerous brow by night, when evils are most free? Oh, then by day, where wilt thou find a cavern dark enough to mask thy monstrous visage? It's conspiracy. Remember, Brutus has been really emphasizing what an honorable person he is. The dilemma is what he is contemplating at this point an honorable act? It's betrayal to a sense, right? It's removal of his loyalty to Caesar, his friend. It is being dressed up as honorable to save the people, but at the same time, on the initial level, it seems very dishonorable. It's murder. It's assassination. Cassius and the rest of all the conspirators arrive, right? There's a bunch of them. But be careful as well. Don't get confused with the Brutuses, right? Oops, what happened? Sorry, I think I did something wrong. Are we back? Everyone can see? Okay. So don't get confused. There's a Decius Brutus as well. Let's go back to all the different characters involved. But here are the conspirators, all right, all together. And it's Cassius is seemingly the leader of this group, this entourage, but of course, they're bringing Brutus in to take that role because they see him as being someone who could be a buffer with the commoners. Okay. Yes, every man of them, and no man here but honors you. Right? Again, note Cassius, like we'll see with Mark Antony, you know, knows the gift of gab, if you will, knows how to flatter, knows how to persuade. And everyone doth wish you had but that opinion of yourself, which every noble Roman bears of you. Again, you get these matching. You got Cassius persuading Brutus. You're going to have Brutus in Act 3 give his speech where he justifies the act. And then you're going to have Mark Antony come and just brilliantly deconstruct that. And let us swear our resolution, he says here, Cassius. Let's make this oath. And got to spend a little time with this. No, not an oath. If not the face of men, the sufferance of our souls, the times abuse. If these be motives weak, break off betimes, and every man hence to his idle bed. If our cause is not right, if our motives are weak, then let's end this now and go back to bed. So let high-sided tyranny range on till each man drop by lottery. But if these, as I'm sure they do, bear fire enough to kindle cowards and to steal with valor the melting spirits of women, then countrymen, what need we any spur but our own cause to prick up, to redress? Okay? He's saying it's not a matter of making an oath. He's again trying to rationalizing it in terms of stipulating that this is something, if we believe in, that we just have to do. We don't have to make oaths or anything like that. This is something we have to do if we believe that that egg is going to hatch out a serpent. Nor the unsuppressible metal of our spirits to think that or our cause or our performance did need an oath, when every drop of blood that every Roman bears and nobly bears is guilty of a several bastardy, if he do break the smallest particle of any promise that hath passed from him. So this is, again, they're plotting, what about Cicero? Shall we sound him? I think he will stand very strong with us. Note here, the important thing here is how Brutus is now taking control. Now that Brutus has made up his mind to become part of the conspiracy, he takes charge. How much is it that they let him take charge? And how much of it is it that he is taking charge because he has the characteristics to be a leader? And of course, that's a big part of what this is about. Who is fit to lead? Who has the characteristics to be a leader? And what kind of leader will that be? Will it be a tyrannical, dictatorial type of leader, as seemingly Caesar is setting out to do? Or will it be a benevolent leader who will delegate the power? But there inevitably seems to be the need for a leader, for that single entity to make final decisions. And therein lies another one of the problems. One of the problems between a republic and an empire. When you have the checks and balances, it's much harder to get things done, as opposed to when you have one person who will make the decisions, has the ultimate say. Our course will seem too bloody, Caius Cassius, to cut the head off and then hack the limbs. They're talking here about now Antony. Should we kill Mark Antony? And Cassius thinks yes, because Mark Antony has such a close relationship with Caesar. And what Cassius is anticipating is Mark Antony is not going to let this go. He'll seek revenge. He'll think it's wrong. He poses a threat to our enterprise. Let Antony and Caesar fall together. Brutus is against this. And again, this is anticipating the impact it'll have on the masses. This is important because those famous speeches in Act 3 are directed to a specific audience, which is the commoners, the Romans, the masses. Our course will seem too bloody to cut the head off and then hack the limbs, right? Antony being one of those limbs, the limbs of Caesar. Like wrath and death and envy afterwards, for Antony is but a limb of Caesar. Let us be sacrificers, but not butchers. Right? He's trying to find this balance, and he's using rationale, a kind of logic, in anticipation of what the fallout's going to be. But alas, Caesar must bleed for it, and gentle friends, let's kill him boldly, but not wrathfully. And let our hearts, as subtle masters do, stir up their servants to an act of rage, and after seem to chide him. This shall make our purpose necessary and not envious, which so appearing to the common eyes, we shall be called purgers, not murderers. And for Mark Antony, think not of him, for he can do no more than Caesar's arm when Caesar's head is off. Now, again, we're seeing the rationale and the thought that Brutus has put into in terms of how to pull this off and be able to justify it. He's looking for justification and to ensure that the masses will recognize that justification. So don't worry about Mark Antony, because he really doesn't pose a threat as long as we are convincing as to our reasons why, and so that we can persuade the masses that we were justified in what we're doing. Reasonable argument. Where it's flawed is in his assessment of Mark Antony. He doesn't perceive Mark Antony as a threat. And as we'll see, that was a mistake. A mistake of huge proportions. Remember, we talked earlier about being attentive to how well these political figures are able to assess their opponents or even their friends. Right? Lends itself to the political intrigue and are their choices and how it's going to affect the choices that they make. So alas, good Cassius, do not think of him. If he loves Caesar, all that he can do is to himself take thought and die for Caesar. And that were much he should, for he is given to sports, to wildness, and much company. You know, we learned earlier, we didn't have a chance to look at it very carefully, Mark Antony is known to be quite the reveler, quite the partier, okay? And that may be part of the reason why Brutus underestimates him. He's, again, known to be a womanizer, to drink a lot, and all this stuff. And again, lends itself to why Brutus may have misread him. It is time to part, but it is doubtful yet whether Caesar will come forth today or no. For he is superstitious grown of late. Remember, we talked about how superstition really is rife here. Why does he want him to come forth today? Well, today is when they're planning to commit the assassination. It's also the Ides of March. Now, even if Cassius isn't fully cognizant of the prophecy from the soothsayer, Brutus is. Grown of late, quite from the main opinion he held once, a fantasy of dreams and ceremonies. It may be these apparent prodigies, the unaccustomed terror of this night, raining fire, and the persuasion of his arguers may hold him from the capital today. This will destroy their plans. Right now, this is the pragmatic assessment. And Decius Brutus says, never fear that. I will convince him. I will bring him to the capital. How's he going to do that? Right? That's a scene we have to look at. And it's letting us know. So we get this exchange here before Portia comes in. The morning comes upon, we'll leave you, Brutus, and friends disperse yourselves, but all remember what you have said, and hear again, and show yourself to be true Romans. We are doing this for Rome. But we're meant to question that. Because again, as they describe themselves, Caesar is still what what they fear in Caesar is yet to be. He's still in the egg. Good gentlemen, look fresh and merrily. Let not our looks put on our purposes, but bear it as our Roman actors do. Another reference to the idea that politicians are actors, which of course, to some extent, they are. But we see this. Now that's twice that I've drawn your attention, so you want to look at that as performance. Now that's very relevant to the performance in Act 3 of Brutus's speech and Mark Antony's speech. So again, don't give anything away. You know, keep the mask on tight. So Portia comes in, probably come back to her a bit more. Actors with a law degree, yeah. Many of them. Now, Portia is, I'll deal probably more with her next week, but it's important now to see her relationship, right? Because we're always looking at the different relationships and keeping in mind, as we did with Othello, the role of women, the limitations imposed on women, and yet what women are in fact capable of contributing, even with those restrictions. And again, with Portia very much reflecting the idea of being able to read people correctly. She recognizes there's something wrong with Brutus, right? And I should not know you, Brutus, dear my lord, make me acquainted with your cause of grief. It's Brutus. Missing things here. I am not well in health, and that is all. Brutus is wise, and were he not in health, he would embrace the means to come by it. Why, so I do, good Portia, go to bed. Like, he's trying to, again, it's a little mini, an encapsulation of this political art of persuasion, if you will. He's trying to do it with Portia, but she sees through it, right? She says, is Brutus sick? And is it physical to walk unbraced and suck up the humors of the dank morning? No, no, no. She's basically saying, if you were sick, you wouldn't be out here risking your health if it's a physical health. No, no, I don't buy it. You have some sick offense within your mind. And again, that's speaking to nature, sickness, sickness of the body, sickness of the mind. And of course, it's the sickness of the mind doesn't mean that the mind is necessarily sick, but it's suggesting. It means that the turmoil is in the mind. Don't hide it from me. And she gets down on her knees. We know this when we see him kneel not, gentle Portia. But she's pleading with him. Tell me, dwell I but in the suburbs of your good pleasure? If it be no more, Portia is Brutus's harlot, not his wife. Right? She's saying, you know, you're shutting me out. I'm your wife. You can't do that. If you're doing that, you're mistreating me. And of course, this plays on Brutus's sense of honor, but also should be playing on his love and as a commentary on the relationships between husband and wife. And of course, he says, you are my true and honorable wife. All right. Again, anytime you spot the word honorable now, you want to be attentive to it and see what the context is. You are all as dear to me as are the rooty drops that visit my sad heart. If this were true, then should I know this secret? I grant I am a woman. Okay, again, there's always, I don't think ever enough has been said about how extraordinarily for the times, strong and layered are Shakespeare's female characters. But withal a woman that Lord Brutus took to wife. I grant I am a woman, but withal a woman well reputed, Cato's daughter. Think you I am no stronger than my sex, being so fathered and so husband? Don't treat me like this. Don't treat me like a child. Oh, ye gods, and Brutus recognizes, render me worthy of this noble wife. Portia goes to, okay, we'll move on here. Let's jump a little bit. This encounter with Ligarius, that must we also, what is it, my Caius, I shall unfold to thee. Are we going to whom it must be done? Set on your foot, and with heart new fired I follow you. To do I know not what, but it sufficeth that Brutus leads me on. And why am I drawing your attention to this? Well, Brutus, most obviously, Cassius and the other conspirators are setting out to kill Caesar because they think he's going to become a dictator. And dictators are all powerful, are leading without being questioned. Their decisions are final, no ands, ifs, or buts. That's what they want to prevent. But here we have Ligarius basically saying, I'm not even going to ask you what you want me to do, but I'll do it. It suffices that Brutus leads me on. This kind of reaction to Brutus is positioning Brutus as that very kind of dictator that he seems to be so opposed to. I know it's a microcosmic view of the more macrocosmic view of Caesar being the leader of all the Roman people, but at the same time, we should be alerted to it. And he doesn't object. Follow me then. Blind following. Well, that's what happens in dictatorships. And perhaps what's happening here with Brutus a bit, in that he's allowing it to happen, is maybe the exception to the rule for Brutus, even though he's not fully articulating it, but this scene seems to lend itself to that possible suggestion, is as long as it's a benevolent dictator, note how Brutus takes charge of the conspirators. He becomes the leader, he becomes the decision maker, which forces us to question his honesty. Well, not so much the honesty as much as his honor. He seems not to realize that he is falling into the same patterns that he seems to be willing to risk all to eliminate. There seems to be a potential for some hypocrisy here, which would then lend itself to the possibility that maybe Brutus, consciously or subconsciously, is a bit ambitious himself. Scene 2, more of the thunder and lightning, right? And now we have Caesar. And his wife is crying out in her sleep, help, ho, they murder Caesar who's within. She's having dreams of his death, of him being assassinated. Prophetic dreams. Again, Shakespeare's established a world that has lends itself to all these types of supernatural beliefs, whether it's superstitions or not. But again, so value in the soothsayers, beware the Ides of March, and now giving credence to the possibility of the dreams having messages that are vital, that are must be adhered to. Again, similar to the prophecy. Don't go out there. I dreamt that they're going to stab you. My goodness, don't go there. And what we're going to see here is how Caesar responds to that. Now trying to get, because he's going to get murdered soon, trying to get a better picture of, and this is the question you should be asking, does Caesar exhibit the qualities that would suggest that Brutus et al. Are justified in killing him? What we want as readers and students of this play is we want, okay, confirmation of that. And if we don't find it, then we have to be questioning Brutus. He seems so sure of himself, and yet what have we seen in Caesar that would suggest that he will become this? There are hints, though there are hints both ways, very intentionally, right? That ambiguity, especially when it comes to human behavior. She in her sleep cried out, help, ho. Servant comes in, go bid the priest, do present sacrifice and bring me their opinions of success. He's asking his servant to go to the priests to do a sacrifice, right, these pagan rituals, to determine whether or not I should take heed of this dream. Is this something for me to be concerned about? This go to the priests who do these bizarre, weren't considered bizarre at the time, rituals to determine whether or not there's something to be concerned about. And of course, his wife is saying, you think you shall walk forth, you shall not stir out of the house today. And Caesar says, Caesar shall forth. The things that threaten me never look but on my back. When they shall see the face of Caesar, they are vanished. So now we're seeing an element of pride, arrogance, but also it's a suggestion that, whoa, I mean, Caesar thinks he's basically invincible. Is Caesar thinking of himself as almost godlike, which is, of course, the fear that Brutus and the others have. But no, when they shall see the face of Caesar, they are vanished. That's believing pretty strongly in yourself and your power. She relates the dream. Linus has whelped in the streets and graves of yon, and she's talking about the whole, everything that's going on, and yielded up their dead. Oh, Caesar, these things are beyond all use, and I do fear them. Caesar's response, what can be avoided whose end is purposed by the mighty gods? Comes back to what we were discussing earlier. How much control do we have over our own destiny? Well, if this is what the gods want, I can't avoid it. Right? What can be avoided whose end is purposed by the mighty gods? Yet Caesar shall go forth, for these predictions are to the world in general as to Caesar. Right? Again, it's almost like he's complex, because on the one hand, he's acting and behaving as if he is this that they fear, thinking of himself almost as godlike, but then he still comes back to wanting to be part of the masses. Remember, he has given much to the people. And we're going to see in Act 3 that in his will, he was giving everything to the people, and that's in his will. So when we question, if he's really for the people and if he's doing good by the people, remember from the PowerPoint we looked at, is he doing it just for political gain? Is he being cynical as he does it? Or is it genuine? In which case, it would suggest that he does care about the people, and his decisions regarding the people would take them into account, which would undercut the whole argument that Brutus and the others are making as to why he should be killed. It would mean that their rationale then, and this might be with Cassius's rationale, is that the principle of the structure of the political system, regardless of its impact on the masses, is what must be preserved. And that's why we must preserve the Republic. But that wouldn't be enough for Brutus, because Brutus is all about what is best for the people. And of course, the irony, because the end result of all this leads exactly to dictatorial rule in Rome and the end of the Republic. And the irony, of course, is that they do what they do to try to preserve that. And it backfires. When beggars die, there are no comets seen. The heavens themselves blaze forth the death of princes. Caesar again now. We're being attentive because we have Caesar now. We have an opportunity to see Caesar with his wife. Of course, mirroring the scene we just saw with Brutus and his wife. Right? Always notice those structural mirrors. Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. Another famous line. Right? And it seems very noble. Of all the wonders that I yet have heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it comes. Pragmatic, brave, logical. Caesar seems to be here. Again, we watch, he goes back and forth. Remember what Cassius was saying about Caesar when he was almost drowned and when he got sick and he was like a little girl. You don't get one-dimensional characters in Shakespeare. So the servant comes back and says, what did the priests, when they're sad, what did they do? They would not have you stirred forth today. Plucking the entrails of an offering forth, they could not find a heart within the beast. So the ritual that the priest performed, it had something to do with cutting open a lamb or a cow, whatever the beast may be, and reading the entrails as a way to predict things. And what they read, and discovering that there was no heart in the beast, which of course, again, lends itself to the supernatural, because without a heart, how would it have ever been alive? And yes, there's more you could do with that figuratively, but keep things manageable. And they're saying, don't go forward today. That's their advice. And he asked for that advice. The gods do this in shame of cowardice. Caesar should be a beast without a heart if he should stay at home today for fear. He puns, he takes off on this no heart in the beast. Well, I'll be like a beast without a heart if I stay here and cower just because some priest told me to, because they opened up a lamb or whatever. And no, Caesar shall not. Danger knows full well that Caesar is more dangerous than he. We are two lions littered in one day, and I the elder and more terrible, and Caesar shall go forth. Now, what is this telling us about Caesar? Again, very layered character. It seems very brave, sure of himself, qualities, because we're looking at Caesar in terms of the qualities he has as a leader. Because this is exactly the reason why they're going to kill him. They fear the kind of leader he will become. And we're looking to see, and what kind of leader is he already? But remember, they're about to make him king. So how do we read this? Do we look at this as noble? Do we look at it as arrogant? Do we look at it as stupid? Hey, you asked them to check with you, and in this world, these things matter. Is it out of bravado? I'm not going to have anyone think I'm a coward. Oh, let's go back to what Cassius said about Caesar in the past. Basically, Cassius gave examples of when he did behave like a coward. What is his true nature? Remember, Brutus says, what will his nature become once he has power? Once he reaches the top of the ladder. And this is for us to be looking and trying to figure things out in relation to that. Now, his wife is pleading with him. She genuinely, now notice at this point, he doesn't seem to be remembering the warning from the soothsayer, right? Maybe if he'd been a little more attentive to that, right? Beware the Ides of March. Your wisdom is consumed in confidence. Okay, consumed, that means you're not being wise. Your confidence is not tempered with wisdom. Foolish type of confidence. Type of confidence that gets you killed. Do not go forth today, call it my fear that keeps you in the house and not your own. And she's trying to give him a way out. Blame me. Blame me. We'll send Mark Antony to the Senate House, and he shall say, you are not well today. And Caesar says, Mark Antony shall say, I am not well, and for thy humor, I will stay at home. There's many ways that this could be read and performed. I think I'll find a clip to show next week. I don't know if I have time. But is he relenting? No, let me upon my knee prevail in this. She's begging him. Okay, Mark Antony shall say I'm not well, and for your humor, to keep you happy, I will stay at home. Or is he maybe saying it in a way like, you can't really expect me to do this? Just a suggestion of other ways of, again, and we don't have that narrator, that omniscient narrator, so common in short stories and novels, to explain it to us. Because his pride flares, but then he seems to relent. And again, the important thing, and that's very good, yes, it is his pride. Thanks for pointing that out. Pride, of course, is very important to this play. And whether pride, false pride, and so on. But how does that pride or false pride relate to the concept of honor? And then why does he relent? And this is, again, especially with Caesar, going back and forth, seemingly. Well, who else goes back and forth, especially for those of you who've read forward into Act 3? It's the commoners. We saw it in the opening scene. You know, we saw Pompey, oh, now it's Caesar, and then we'll see, oh, Brutus, then it's going to be Mark Antony. Okay, again, a bit of mirroring going on there. Now, remember who Decius Brutus is, right? He's one of the conspirators, and he was the one who told Cassius and the others when they were concerned he's not going to go out. He's going to know something's up, or he's going to see all the craziness that's going on in Rome, and he's going to know that's a bad omen. I better not go out today. And if, God forbid, he was listening to that soothsayer who told him about the Ides of March, there's no way he's going to go out. And it was Decius Brutus who came out and said, don't worry, I'll get him there. I know just how to do this. And what we're going to see again seemingly much of it in preparation for the famous speeches in Act 3, is this engagement in the use of rhetorical devices to persuade, and the power of language and the word to convince people to do things they should not necessarily do. And if you're good at it, it's quite a gift. If any of you out there have ever worked in sales in any of those call centers or anything like that, if you're good at that, you're engaging in these rhetorical skills. And we will talk more about it. I'll probably be posting something on these specific logos, pathos, ethos for you to look over. I don't know how much time I'll spend with it, but I do want you to be able to recognize it, especially when we look closely next week, because we're going to run out of time today, at Act 3 and those 2 speeches. I'm hearing someone may want to say something. No? Okay. So we'll see here a little encapsulation of that. I will not come today, tell them so, Odysseus. Okay, so as anticipated, he made his decision here, and he will not go because he's going to please his wife, seemingly. And she says, say he is sick. Now watch this. Say he is sick. And shall Caesar send a lie? Like, seemingly, right? Note what he says. Let's look at it carefully. And you are come in very happy time to bear my greetings to the senators and tell them that I will not come today. Cannot is false, and that I dare not, falser. I will not come today, tell them so, Odysseus. I don't have to give a reason. I'm Julius Caesar. I don't have to give a reason. His wife comes up and says, say he is sick. And, well, his response to that, shall I send a lie? Have I in conquest stretched mine arm so far to be afraid to tell graybeards the truth? Odysseus, go tell them Caesar will not come. That's it. But she started something here. And of course, Decius Brutus is going to pick up on it. Most mighty Caesar, let me know some cause, lest I be laughed at when I tell them so. Watch again, because this is the moment where we really get the clearest picture we're going to get of Caesar here. The cause is in my will. I will not come. That is enough to satisfy the Senate. Right? So arrogance, confidence, what are we, I don't have to explain myself to you or to the Senate, suggesting then that he is adopting that kind of dictatorial mentality, godlike mentality. I don't have to explain myself to anybody. But for your private satisfaction, because I love you, I will let you know. Calpurnia here, my wife, stays me at home. She dreamt tonight she saw my statua, which, like a fountain with 100 spouts, did run pure blood. And many lusty Romans came smiling, and did bathe their hands in it. And these does she apply for warnings, and portents, and evils imminent. And on her knee hath begged that I will stay at home today. So again, note this character and try to envision how it would play out. The cause is my will. I will not come. That is enough to satisfy the Senate. But for your private satisfaction, because I love you, I'll tell you the real reason. Right? So who is this Caesar? And we come back to another theme that we saw earlier, interpretations. So Brutus, remember, he already promised Cassius, I know how to handle this. Because Brutus, as so many of the others, is skilled in persuasion. This dream is all a misinterpreted. It was a vision, fair and fortunate. Note the details of the dream, by the way. Those of you who have read into Act 3, all right, bathing their hands in the blood and all this stuff. It's exactly what happens. Well, pretty much. This dream is all a misinterpreted. No. You're misinterpreting. She misinterpreted the dream. It was a vision, actually, just the opposite. It is a vision, fair and fortunate. Your statue sprouting blood in many pipes, in which so many smiling Romans bathe, signifies that from you great Rome shall suck reviving blood, and that great men shall press for tinctures, stains, relics, and cognizance. This, by Calpurnia's dream, is signified. So, strong commentary there on what we do when we're interpreting these things, and how he has taken what looks clearly in the way that it's described here as a very negative dream, a negative interpretation. He's now turned it totally around. Oh, this is actually good. And that's always, of course, one of the problems that we run into as students of literature when we come up with our interpretations. But of course, the key for us is we need to find more substantiating evidence to support our interpretations. And in this case, Odysseus would need to have more evidence to support his interpretation, and then you weigh them and decide which is the more feasible. We know, as an audience here, that this is the proper interpretation. We have all the other evidence to convince us of that. Not the least of which is we know that Decius Brutus is one of the conspirators. But it is demonstrating to us this difficulty of interpretation, because it could be so easily countered. But if the evidence isn't there, then you have to dismiss it. But that's part of the rhetorical strategies that are used in order to persuade and convince people, where you can ignore certain evidences or facts even, if you can galvanize your audience, persuade your audience through emotions and passions and so on, which then tend to blind logic. Again, in anticipation of Mark Antony's speech. And Caesar's response, in this way have you well expounded it. Now, of course, part of Caesar accepting that, first of all, he doesn't know everything we know, but he's not even remembering where the Ides March. He's again, back and forth. He's already spotted Cassius as being someone he's got to watch out for. There's crazy stuff going on outside with the raining fire. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that, his wife's interpretation and his initial interpretation should be adhered to more than Decius's. But at the same time, when you're the audience, in this case, Caesar is the audience for Decius Brutus, the audience will often latch on to what they want to hear. And again, you see this in politics all the time. Even if there's a stronger argument for the counter interpretation, they'll go with the weaker interpretation if it's what they want to hear. That's something we, as students and academics, have to avoid. Make sure we're not falling into that trap, because then our interpretations and our essays and our assignments will then be compromised. But in the realm of the political, in the realm of society, in the realm of our personal lives outside of academia, we often drop into this way of making arguments and trying to convince others and being convinced ourselves. The more we're aware of that, the less likely anyone will be able to do this to us. We'll be able to go, well, wait a minute here now. Hold on. All right. And then we're not the audience they're after. They'll go after the audience that won't say, stop, wait a minute. And Caesar here displays another flaw, that he is susceptible to latching on to an interpretation that has no evidence but is something he wants to hear. And again, watching how he continues with it. I have, when you have heard what I can say, right? He asks him to expound on it. But you can see you've already used the well. And I will. Let me explain. The Senate have concluded to give this day a crown to mighty Caesar. So see what he's doing. What does this, it doesn't have a direct correlation to the interpretation. Okay, it's a bit like what we call a red herring of sorts. It's a distraction to latch on to him and bring him on board without having to address the main issue. If you shall send them word you will not come, their minds may change. But of course, that doesn't really relate, again, to the dream. Now it's just saying, you know, if you don't come, you're not going to get your crown. Exactly, right? He said so that he could forget about the bad omen and only think about him getting the crown and power. So it's a deflection, because we have this interpretation. Caesar seems to like it because it's what he wants to hear, but he still says, you know, explain that. Where's your evidence? Right? Everything that we're supposed to do doesn't give proper evidence. It's a total different tact. But this tact is set up by being able to push that dream interpretation, right, to undercut it by giving an oppositional interpretation. And then when you know you can't substantiate that alternative interpretation properly, move away from it, but always making sure that you are presenting arguments, ideas that will have a direct appeal to your audience. This is not, again, what we do when we make argumentative essays. This is pure persuasion, right? And I think I've talked to you about the difference between the two. This is pure persuasion. Again, very common in politics. Playing on emotions, playing on his ego, playing on all sorts of things that he knows is there, and exploiting that. Besides, it were a mock apt to be rendered for someone to say, break up the Senate till another time when Caesar's wife shall meet with better dreams. Now he's humiliating him. He still hasn't given any real evidence to substantiate his interpretation. But it's extraordinarily effective. You don't really want people to think you didn't come because your wife had a dream, do you? You're Julius Caesar. People are laughing at you, man. If Caesar hide himself, shall they not whisper, lo, Caesar is afraid? Look at every point he's doing here. Now, pardon me, Caesar, for my dear, dear love to our preceding bids me tell you this, and reason to my love is liable. And of course, when we put that into the context that we know that Decius Brutus is only doing this so he can kill him, the deviousness of it all, and the power of their ability. We have so much of that going on in this play. Unlike Iago, I mean, similar, but Iago didn't have to do it in this way. For Iago, it was much easier. If you remember how Iago would manipulate. But boy, they were just so easily manipulated. And even though Caesar is a bit easier than some of the others, it's still not the same. It's similar, again, thinking back to Iago, but it's done here with much greater brilliance. Again, wait to, especially when you see Mark Antony. And now Caesar's, it's done. I mean, again, Caesar is, and this again exposes his weakness, that he is so prone and easily flattered and so on. So yes, you can draw maybe even closer association with some of Iago's victims. But again, look here, how foolish do your fears seem now, Calturina. I'm ashamed I did yield to them. Back and forth, at the whim of whomever. His wife convinced him this way. Now Decius Brutus convinces him this way. Back and forth, exposing Caesar's weakness. But not necessarily indicating that he will become what the conspirators believe he will once he comes out of that serpent's egg. If anything, the wishy-washiness would suggest otherwise. Still could be dangerous, but not forceful, not in control, because he's so back and forth. Okay. Good morrow, Caesar. Let's see, find a good spot to. Okay, let's get to scene 4 here at least. Well, Anthony, see Anthony, the rebels long tonight. So basically, bottom line is he agrees to go. Almost done with Act 3, so let's get there. Just quickly here, when he's going, right? So now everything's being set up. We'll try it. Artemidorus. I think so. He's reading a paper. And remember, we're going to come back and look at this because, again, there are people out to try to protect him. Caesar, beware of Brutus, take heed of Cassius, come not near Casca. Have an eye on Cinna, trust not Trebonius, mark well Metellus, Cimber, Decius Brutus, loves thee not. Thou hast wronged Caius, Ligarius. There is but one mind in all these men, and it is bent against Caesar. It's going to be the clearest evidence available. Someone has uncovered the plot, and it now is going to want to warn Caesar. Okay? Very brief scene or brief moment, brief scene. What's going to happen when he tries to give? Well, you probably haven't read that far, so I won't go there. We get back here again with Portia and her exchange. A man, but a woman's might. Again, this will be something I want to come back to, especially in the second half of the play, talk about the role of the women and how important they are to the play. Okay, there's I must go in, I me, how weak a thing the heart of woman is. O Brutus, the heavens speed thee to thine enterprise. Sure the boy heard me, Brutus hath a suit that Caesar will not grant. She knows he's up to something, but she doesn't know what. Remember, it seemed like Brutus was about to reveal to her, you're my wife, my honored wife, but then there was an interruption. So she's now trying to glean and figure out what is going on. I shall beseech him to befriend himself. We'll come back to it. Good place to stop. We're right at Act 3, and we'll review this portion. I'm going to want to come back to it because we're going to see later on how that plays out. Okay, we're almost at 12. Questions? I mean, I know we went through a lot fairly quickly. We usually do an act a week. We went through 2 acts. I'm actually kind of proud of myself that we got through it, though I feel somewhat guilty that there's so much that we didn't cover, but I think we got the more salient and important points. Remember, as always, especially now because I'm hoping you'll be able to finish it by next week. The things that were brought up, themes, character, flaws, etc., Now, as you continue reading, look for them. Okay, and it really gives you that extra alertness. And bring your questions, your observations, right? Notice what I've been trying to demonstrate is ultimately they're very fixated on that the idea that they're doing the right thing. Are they? So much of it is predicated on their belief that Caesar will become a certain kind of leader. What evidence is there to confirm that, especially since they are anticipating it? That ties in as well with the different interpretations of the dream. Where is their evidence? And if they don't have that firm evidence, are they acting correctly? Not saying one way or the other. That's the questions you want to be asking. Next week, we will finish this play and then start King Lear. Yes, I think that'll leave us 5 classes for Lear. And we'll need it. Lear's there. And you'll see, the plan is then to tie in Lear with both Othello and Julius Caesar. There is a method to my madness as to why I'm taking these plays, pick these 3 plays, and the order in which we're doing them. Any other questions or concerns for now? Okay, I will post that PowerPoint. I didn't even show it to you. I won't bother now. Maybe I'll save it for next week. Look, I may post another document. It's a series of questions for reflection from each scene of the first 3 acts. I may post it actually and give you something to look at. It's fairly lengthy. There's a lot of different questions I ask you to ruminate about. Don't get bogged down in it. It's just something, again, to mainly you can come back to and reference as getting more familiar with the play. Anything else? Let me stop the